Is Gemara Yevamos Daf Mem Tes. All learning has been generously sponsored as a schos Ilu Neshama for Chaim Mordechai Ben Naftali Tzvi, the Mertz Hashem, the learning of the entire Chabura, as we're going to be concluding the fourth parak of Yevamos, perhaps today or tomorrow, should bring Chaim Mordechai Ben Naftali Tzvi to an higher place in Gan Eden Shalmaila, and as well brings the entire family a source of Yeshua's and Nechamais, as well as learning Shviz Chosirach V'Yisochaim Devar Tam Siva Bas Varachol Shleim V'Lim Bizav Oivik Ben Teli Shem Ben Chaya B'Lim Yudis Bas Sima Malka, as well as Chosfur Shleim Shal Yos Ben Revei Dashmo Ben Tila Dalzim Mechalatz Necham Bas Riva Sarah Bluma, Bas Mendel Chai Moshe Yeshua ben Malka, Bashavavega Bashir Chano, Besoich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We're holding on the very top of Memites Aman Aleph. Again, an apology for the lateness of this year. Post Yom Tif and B'siyat D'Shemaya, everything should be back in order. Starting with tomorrow's year, should be up tonight. So says the Mishnah, Izeu Mamzer. What is a Mamzer? A topic in which we really dealt many times about. We'll deal again with. But this is the source, this is the Makar, says the Mishnah. What is a mamzer? Of course, many practical ramifications. A mamzer is asr lovoi b'kahal. A mamzer is not allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael, as we've seen. He can only marry a mamzeres. A ma'uves lo yuchel etake, something that's crooked that cannot be fixed. So what is this entity called a mamzer? Says the Mishnah, kol she'er basar. So the first sheet is Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says, Chayve lavin. Anytime it's below yavai, there's a negative commandment, there's a lav, you can't come into Klal Yisrael. Therefore, that child is considered a mamzer. Shimon Atimani Omer, no. Kol shechayavim love kares b'dei shamayim. What's a mamzer? Anytime there's kares, krisus, krives, a mamzerus. V'alochik dvarav, and we paskin like Shimon Atimani. For Rabbi Yeshua Aimer, a bit of an interesting setup in the Mishnah. Shita 1, Shita 2, paskin like Shita 2, now Shita 3. But either way, it continues the Mishnah that says, Yeshua, what is his opinion? Kol shechavin alam misas bezdin. So we had lavin, we had krisos, and now we have misas bezdin. And says the Mishnah, Amr Rav Shimon Yochai says, Amr Rav Shimon Hazek, Matzasi Megillas Yochsin. I found a scroll, I found genealogical records, I found Megillas Yochsin, Yerushalayim, the Kosav. You know what it was written in it? Ish Ploini Mamzer. Meish is ish. That what is a mamzer? One who comes from an ish is ish. Like Chaim Divi Rabbi Yeshua, that's going to be Rabbi Yeshua. That whenever there is chayvi misas bezdin, not the word is not just, not chayvi krisus, but chayvi misas bezdin, that creates mamzerus. Says the Mishnah, Ishtay Shemeisai Mutter Ba'achaisa. Second part of the Mishnah discusses, we know that there's a lav, one is not allowed to marry his wife's sister, but that is only as long as a bechayov, as long as she is alive. So says the Mishnah that Ishtay Shemeisa, if one's wife is niftares, then Mutter Ba'achaisa. The lav, the negative commandment to marry your sister, falls off, and after the wife's death, you're allowed to marry your sister. Gersha umeisa. Let's say one divorces his wife, and then she is nifter. Again, mutar ba'chaisa. Nisis la'acher. If someone divorces his wife, she marries someone else. Umeisa, then she dies. Again, mutar ba'chaisa. So 3 applications in which the death of one's wife, whether it was one's current wife, whether it was one's divorced wife, whether it was one's divorced wife who married another woman, in all 3 cases, with her death, one is allowed to marry her sister. And the Mishnah concludes with a similar application that Yevimta Shemeisa. If one is awaiting Yavam, Yibam, and if the Yevama is Niftares, what is Allaha Mutar Ba'chaisa? Chalasla, if you did chlisa with her, umeisa, then she dies, Mutar Ba'chaisa. Nisis la'acher, if she marries someone else, umeisa, then she dies. Again, mutar ba'chaisa. So really 2 parts of the Mishnah. Part A of the Mishnah deals with the 3 shitas of what is a mamzer, krisus, misas bezdin, lav, shimon atimani, we paskin like said the Mishnah, krisus. Part B in the Mishnah is that when is one usher to his wife's sister only while she is alive, but after she is dead, even if it's after divorce, even if she already remarried. Similar with a Yevama, after her death, after chalitza and death, after she married someone else in death. All these cases, you're allowed to marry the sister. So says the Gemara, let's take part A first, part B second. Part A, dealing with what creates a mamzer. My time of Rabbi Akiva. Where does Rabbi Akiva come from? Rabbi Akiva was Shita number 1 in the Mishnah. Kol shu b'lo yavai. Whoever is under lav. Where does Rabbi Akiva come from? The Chsev, it says in the Torah of Lo Yikach Ish as Ishes Aviv. One should not marry the wife of his father. V'lo yigale kenaf aviv. One should not reveal or uncover the robe of his father. So again, a bit of a double part of the pasuk, which is interesting. Why do we need it? It's obviously honing in and is magnifying a second in. You can't marry the wife of your father, but you also are not allowed to uncover the kanaf aviv, which that the Gemara darshes according to Rabbi Akiva. Kanaf shara aviv lo yigale. The kanaf, the literal, the robe that the father saw, one cannot uncover. But like Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Akiva holds or agrees with Rabbi Yehuda, Damar Banu says Aviv Akasam Medaber. The pasuk is not talking about a regular relations that the father had. It's Anu says Aviv. If the father was Mahanes, he forced women to have relations. That is what the pasuk is referring to when it says Lo Yigaleh. You cannot reveal, you cannot uncover, you cannot be together with that woman. Why? And that's the source of Akiva. We see over here, Lo Yigaleh in the case of Chayve Lavan. Says Rav Akiva, V'samach lei, and what's the next pasuk? The next pasuk, or two psukim later, as we see in the pasukim on the side, Lo yavi mamzer v'kal Hashem. So the Torah continues and segues directly into mamzerus, in which Rav Akiva learns. It's talking about Chayve Lavan, and then it goes into mamzerus. What is a mamzer? Says Rav Akiva from Chayve Lavan. Alma mehani ave mamzer. From these cases, this is what creates a mamzer. That is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, Shita number 1 in the Mishnah. But asked the Gemara, again, that was Rabbi Akiva concurring with Rabbi Yehuda. Well, Rav Semai, Demar Bishar Chavilavin, Delav Disher. According to Rav Semai, who says that a mamzer is even one who is not a she'er, is not a relative. Rabbi Yeshiva of the Marbe Afilu Chayve Asay, that he learns out that he not only lavin but even asay. Nafkelo me viloi, the extra viloi. Why does the pasuk? If we look at the side for a moment, why does the pasuk have to say Lo yikach ish as ish as aviv? Viloi yigaleh kenaf aviv. That extra viloi is completely unnecessary. He could have said Lo yikach ish as aviv yigaleh kenaf aviv. What's the extra viloi? So they learn out that extra viloi is coming to include these additional cases, says Rav Semai and Rav Yeshivov. V'Shimon HaTeimani. Says the Gemara, Shimon HaTeimani, who argues on Rabbi Akiva. And he says it's not Chayve Lavin. He says that what's a mamzer from Chayve Krisos. What does he say? A third or fourth explanation of what this pasuk of. We had Rav Akiva according to Rav Yehuda, Rav Sheva, Rav Semai. Now comes along the Rabbanan, and what do they say? They say that a shemeres yavam is what the pasuk is referring to. It's not a regular lab; it's a special chayve krisos v'samach lei. It continues the Torah, lo yavai mamzer, and therefore says Shimon HaTeimani, who the Mishnah already taught us is the psak halacha, alma mechayve krisos have mamzer, and that is part number 1. The machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and Shimon HaTeimani, whether a mamzer is from Lavin, says Rabbi Akiva, learned out from the pasuk of likach ishes aviv, lo yavai mamzer bekal Hashem. We see that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's Anusas Aviv, it's Alav, Rabbi Yeshiva, Rav Simai, Marbe Chayve Lavin, Chayve Asay. But comes along, Shimon HaTeimani, he disagrees, and he says, no, the pasuk is talking about Shemeres Yavam. Pasuk is not talking about a regular lav, a regular negative commandment. Rather, the pasuk is talking about Chayve Krisos. Ask the Gemara of Rabbi Yeshua. But what does Rabbi Yeshua do? Rabbi Yeshua was the final opinion. Rabbi Yeshua was the final opinion in our Mishnah. Where does Rabbi Yeshua say that? Here's Rabbi Yeshua, Here's Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua's 4 lines into the Mishnah that said it's from Chayve Misas Bezdin. So you understand Lavin, Rabbi Akiva. We understand Krisos, Shimon HaTeimani. What does Rabbi Yeshua, who says Chayve Misas Bezdin, what does he do? It says Rabbi Yeshua, Lichtav Rachmanu lo yigaleh lo yikach v'lo yigaleh lamali. What do we need? The extra pasuk alalav achi kamar. Milo yikach ad lo yigale avi mamzer. What's a mamzer? One who's involved in this process. One who would be punished by capital punishment. One who would be chayiv misas bezdin. But more than that, loy have mamzer. More than that, there is not a mamzer, and that's where Yeshua, as he's bumping it up, that it's only a case in which one would be liable, misas bezdin, would the child be a mamzer. So three shitas in the Mishnah. But comes along Abaye, and Abaye says a very important din. Every din is important. Abaye's din just holds a lot of weight, because unfortunately there are many cases of Abaye's din. Says Abaye, Akol Malidim Bebal Anida. If so, everyone holds. If one has relations with a nida, which of course, number one, every single girl of Bisman has a nida, they do not go to the mikvah. Number two, if one's wife, unfortunately, is not shemer tayir samishpacha, she can be a nida. If someone is bal a nida, and as Rashi in the last line points out, even though the Isser to be with a nida is an Isser krisos, so seemingly it's krisos, there should be mamzerus. Says Abaye, no, I call moedim ebal nida. Everyone agrees. As we turn over to Memtesem Beis, or Viala Saita, if someone's together with a Saita, if someone is warned not to be, that their wife was adulterous, and therefore they're not allowed to be together, but they were, She'ein Avlan Mamzer. In both of these cases, the Vlad is not a Mamzer. Let's look at the top Rashi for a moment. Rashi points out, the Bala Saita, Ishes Ish Shezinsa, and therefore it's Asla Baila. If they are actually go back together, the halacha is whether it's a nida, whether it's a saita, the child is not a mamzer. Why? Says the Gemara in the top line of Memtesem Beis, nida ta'tafsi ba kedushin. You know why nida does not create a mamzer? Because if one would marry a nida, ta'tafsi ba kedushin shenemar, as the Torah teaches us, vati nidasa alav afilu b'shas nidasa. Tafsi ba kedushin. Kedushin is chal, and whenever kedushin is chal, there cannot be the resultant of mamzer. Saita nami da tafsi ba kedushin. A similar reason, since one can marry the saita, the kedushin would be chal, whether be'isr or not. Therefore, the child is not a mamzer. Tanami hachi. The Gemara proves this. Then I call maidim balanida saita shemer siyavam. Shenavad mamzer. The Gemara asked, Avi is kasha v'abayi shemer siyavam. Why doesn't Abaye list Shemer Yavam? He said Nida, he says Saita, but the Bryce lists the third. The Bryce says Shemer Yavam as well, says the Gemara Mesavkla Ikiravi Kishmuel. Abaye did not believe Shemer Yavam is so simple. He wasn't sure whether to go with Rav and Shmuel, Machlekes that we'll get to in Sadi Bezim and Beis. And therefore, that is why Abaye did not list Shemer Yavam. And now we go to part B, before part B in the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? Oraya to Shimon HaTeimani. Shimon HaTeimani, who said that a mamzer only comes from krisos. Shita number 2 in the Mishnah. Again, Rabbi Kiva said lavin. Shimon HaTeimani said krisos. Rabbi Yeshua said chayvim. He says bezdin. But the Mishnah said we paskin like Shimon HaTeimani chayvim krisos. How do I know? Omar Rav Shimon ben Azai, he said matzasim megillah seifrim. That said, like Shimon HaTeimani. Tani explains the Gemara. We're at the 2 dots, 8 lines into Memtesem and Beis. Shimon ben Azai oimer matzasim glas yosem Yerushalayim because of ba ish ploini mamzer meish es ish. Then therefore that is the raya. Because of ba, and you know what else was written in this Megillah Seifrim? Mishnah Rav Elazar ben Yaakov Kavenaki. The Mishnah is talking about Rav Elazar ben Yaakov Arkavanaki, Vikasaban. He said a third thing inside this Megillah Sefer, these genealogical records. Menashe Harag es Yeshayahu. The Menashe killed Yeshaya, his grandfather. Menashe, a terrible and evil king, murdered Yeshaya Hanavi, his grandfather. And now we're going to begin a bit of Navi, a bit of a history lesson into Menashe, into Yeshaya. Why Menashe and his rishos went and actually cold-blooded murdered Yeshaya. Let's see the Gemara. Where did Menashe get to John to judge up Yeshaya and eventually kill him? Amar Le, so Menashe said, I have 3 tainas against Yeshaya. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no man will ever see God. And you, Yeshaya, what did you say in your nevuah? Ve'eres Hashem yeshiv al kisei ramin isa. And I see Hashem sitting on the throne of glory. How's it possible? Says Menashe. Moshe Rabbeinu said, no one will ever see God. And you, Yeshaya, said you did. Chayim Misa. Number 2, Moshe Rabbeinu Chomer Mika Hashem. Elokeinu b'chol karinu, I love. Who's like Hashem our God? Wherever you call out to Him, you could call out to Hashem always. V'at amrit, and you, Yeshaya, what did you say? There's you Hashem. V'matzai. Only call out to Hashem when He can be found. And number 3, Moshe Rabbeinu Chomer Es Miser Yamecha Amalei, fill up the days of your year. Meaning everyone is a predestined an exact amount of days and years to live. V'at amrit. And you, Yeshaya, what did you say? V'osafti al yamecha chamisha zeishana. We're going to add on 15 years. So says Menashe, for the 3 reasons you, Yeshaya, who was his grandfather, violated the word of Moshe Rabbeinu, you are chayiv misa. Omar Yeshaya, says Yeshaya Navi, Yadana beidol mekabel madam alei. I know Menashe is not going to accept a single word. I can explain it. I can tell him why he's wrong. He's not going to listen to me. And if I say to him, listen to this sidkus and godless of Yeshaya Navi, and if I start explaining to Menashe what I meant, Ashvaye Mazid, he is going to be amazed. He's going to be a cold-blooded murder when he kills me. So Amar, so says Yeshaya, I'm not going to do that. Amar Shem Iblaya Ba'arza, he said the Shem HaMafarish, said Hashem's ineffable name, and Yeshaya is swallowed up by a cedar tree. Asiri La'arza, but Menashe's henchmen found the cedar tree in Asrua, and they split it with an axe. When the axe, reached the mouth of Yeshaya, Nachnafshei was nifter misham da'amar am tamei. And this was his punishment, that he was nifter Yeshaya when he got hit by his mouth, by the fact that he spoke and he said that Klal Yisrael, he said, I'm dwelling amongst people with impure lips. Midah keneged midah, his punishment was, that is where he was killed. And that's really, the truth is, we're going to stop over here, because that's the end of the story. That is Menashe, cold-blooded murder, perhaps not amazed, but killing the wonderful Yeshaya Hanavi. Tomorrow, the Gemara is going to go through and say, wait, there were 3 tainas, 3 questions Menashe had on Yeshaya. How do we answer those questions? That's going to take us all the way to the end of the parak. So, B'siyata Dishmaya, we'll pick up from here and we'll conclude the parak in tomorrow's shiur.